Hey there, welcome back to Connect the Dots, the podcast for business, marketing, and sales professionals who want to transform their marketing and sales strategies into profitable growth. If this sounds like what your business needs, go to vickyoneil.com/contact and let's schedule a chat. This week, my guest is Ruthie Bowles. Ruthie is founder of Defy the Status Quo and is a B2B content marketing strategist. This was such a great conversation as she shares how to use data in creating marketing content, how to leverage user generated content, and so much more. I don't want to keep you waiting, so let's get started with Ruthie. Thank you very much, Ruthie, for joining me today on Connect the Dots. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I know that we've had our chat beforehand and talked about different things that we were going to cover today. But for those who don't know you, if you could start with an introduction and tell them what you do or what problems you solve.
Absolutely. Okay, so my name's Ruthie Bowles, and I own Defy the Status Quo, which is a B2B content marketing consultancy for service companies and consulting firms. So what we typically focus on is building customer or client trust and thought leadership through content like blog articles and white papers and case studies, social media. If it's in content marketing, pretty much we've got it if you can write it down. And so this has been my business for the last couple of years. And before that, I had about a 10-year career as part of the government. I was a Persian Farsi translator. And so I did 8.5 years in the U.S. Army, and then I got out and I was a stay-at-home mom for a little bit, and I went back as a federal contractor for about 1.5 years. And I just decided I wasn't happy with my job anymore. I was really good at it. It was great pay. But apparently the parts I loved the most about my job were, the Army parts. Surprise, surprise. Because if you had asked me that, some years ago, I would have been like, I don't know about this. I really liked that part of my life. And since I wasn't going back into the Army, I was like, I think I've done too much in life to just sit here and be unhappy and dread going to work. And so I decided to make a change. So over the course of about a year, I was doing content marketing part-time without any real serious background in content marketing per se. I taught myself all of the content marketing pieces, but I kind of built off of knowledge that I already had. So, I worked with a business development company that works with federal contractors. I focused on translation companies and things like that because I had experience there. And then I was just kind of able to prove results and proof of concept and building up the portfolio. And so I have to say about 6 months in, I was like, okay, I think I could quit my job. I think I could quit my job and do this full time. And I had found out I was pregnant with our 4th child. And so I was like, boom, I'll use my maternity leave. And that is what happened. I used my maternity leave and ramped up to a full-time, kind of client base. And then I did not go back to work. And then Defy the Status Quo was born. And this is what I've been doing. And I love it.
Well, tell me about your content learning process. You'd mentioned that it wasn't like formal training that you had, but you learned, the content creation or the content development piece of your business on the job, essentially. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started out with the content creation side of things. And this is probably one of the best places for anyone to start, even if they're, working in a marketing department and they, are tasked with content. The tactics for content marketing strategy, so the way that you would actually implement that content marketing strategy, are the easiest pieces to learn. So that's how to, create a great marketing video, or how to write a blog post, or how to write a case study. Those pieces are the easiest things to learn. And so that is where most like freelance writers start. And that's where I started. But what I started to notice was that my clients were wanting more strategy. So in all the same places where I was able to find great content creation information, HubSpot being one of my favorites to recommend. I'm not their target audience per se, but I feel like I kind of fall into a secondary audience since HubSpot's gone through great lengths to prove their industry leadership, which they definitely have. So even though I don't have it in the budget to pay for all the cool HubSpot tools, but I am confident in telling my clients who do have that budget, if you're thinking about HubSpot, this could be a great move for you. I've worked with a lot of clients in terms of managing their HubSpot, and in addition to their content. So it's a great platform, and they have a lot of how-to information there. And so it's one of my favorite places to go when I'm looking for that sort of information, because they put it out there. They're incredibly thorough, and they're not holding anything back at all. Like, all of the content you can download from them is great. I also love Julia McCoy's content marketing book. She's got a course as well, but I managed to get a lot of information that helped me a lot from the book. And then just, it's looking at content. I think, like, you've got like your content creator hat on, and so we don't always see it the same way as when we are legitimately in Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, and you're really just trying to find the answer to your problem. We don't always pay attention to the steps and the experiences that we go through as the actual search engine user, and then as the audience, but also learning how to pay attention better to those types of experiences on my end to see what it was I liked about a particular blog post or video that attracted me. But I turned back to a lot of those same places once I started wanting to incorporate strategy. And that actually lined up really well with my government work, because I was an intelligence analyst. So from like my youth, I was incredibly creative and what you would call like right-brained. But being an intelligence analyst, I had to take I had to develop my left brain, if you will. And I use those terms metaphorically. I know there's a lot of science out there that says it doesn't matter, but metaphorically speaking, I had to learn how to develop that side of myself. And it was something I was able to bring to the table. For my clients, so they was like, oh, you don't know what you should have on your blog, you don't know what you should have on your website, that's okay, I can figure that out for you. And so it was like an added value. And so I do spend a lot of time talking to people about that as well. Just because they feel confident, like, yeah, I could write a blog post, but like, am I wasting my time? What am I writing about?
You've mentioned a lot of different key points throughout the process, which I was just like, I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to interrupt. So I'm trying to keep them all in here. Mentioned the intelligence side of your experience and how you incorporated that into the content creation process. Was that like data based? Was that using numbers and incorporating that into your content, or was it just the process itself that you incorporated into creating content? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I would say that it was definitely data influenced, but more than that, it was also being able to pick out patterns, and see possibilities where, other people might not. And so those hidden possibilities, that's something that came up a lot in my previous career, just because you almost never have the full picture of anything. So it's, what you know, and then you're always trying to figure out, you need to know what you don't know. And so filling in those gaps. And so, yeah, I don't find that, data analysis is as hard for me as it might be for other types of creatives. And that's just something, you can take that data and really weave it into your content. Even something, at least it feels simple once you get it set up. So I don't want to like downplay it or anything, but once you get it set up and you've got something like Google Search Console running, being able to click there and see what your website's actually ranking for, what people are actually searching for, like that's just one step that you can take in the right direction in terms of using real data for your content. So if anybody doesn't have it set up, please go do that.
It is a must. And then in regards to the content as well, I think you'd mentioned target audience. And do you incorporate personas, like the creation of personas, into your content creation part or your content creation process? Or is that something you leave to your clients to do themselves, and then you use that as part of like how you define and create content targeted to a particular audience?
So it depends. If the client has already done the work on the personas and they match up with at least what I can find in terms of like a cursory amount of research, then I'm comfortable using the personas. But this is kind of one of those steps where it's at the very beginning, or at least it should be, and it can be a very like serious hard stop if they feel like they have personas developed and they actually don't. They could be really general, non-specific. They could be totally missing the mark. Um, and you see this sometimes when clients will address the user of their software or their service or product versus the person who's actually going to be buying said product or service. And so that's kind of a fine line. And so sometimes I have to point out, well, actually, you have two audiences here. Yes, you need the user on your side, but you have to, communicate, and you have to present your content in such a way that the person who's actually got buying power, who is going to feel comfortable making that choice. So sometimes they feel like they've done the buyer personas, but they haven't yet. And so that is something that I, help my clients develop. But I've also come across, I've got some clients who I got their personas and I was like, whew, these look beautiful. Not only they look beautiful, they're incredibly useful. You could tell that they really dug in, and, somebody or some few people in the marketing department really knew what they were doing when they were digging up this research. But it's an evolving process as you learn more about your customers too. So I always tell my clients that, hey, okay, so these are our personas, but they're not set in stone. So we may learn something new that maybe causes a division, or maybe now we've got like an additional sub audience, or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely a key. Uh, it's key in developing the content strategy. So when I'm brought on to um, develop a company's content strategy, that is something that's included.
Mhm. And then how do you use that information to create content?
We've developed our buyer personas. We have what we feel is a good idea of our customer or our client. I also like to circle back around and talk to sales, and I talk to customer service. And so that'll probably be like the icing on top in terms of the personas, but always figuring out what those issues are that they're experiencing can be a great place to start in terms of creating content. And then, so yeah, so we've got our personas, we've talked to sales, we've talked to customer service, and then also just taking a look at the data. So looking at, where you are in the first place, who's coming to our website. Are these the sort, does at least the demographics match up pretty well with what we've got as our buyer persona? If yes, then good. If not, then you need to figure out why the wrong people are coming to your website. Looking at those issues identified by sales, identified by customer service, but you really have to engage in a serious listening campaign. So if you know who your persona is, then you know where they like to spend their time. So if you're B2B and you know that a lot of your potential clients are on LinkedIn, then it would behoove you to kind of go through a listening campaign and go and find out what it is that they're talking about. And finding out what their issues are, their hot button issues as related to potentially what you offer. And that's kind of that confluence there between the data and the listening is where you start to develop the best content ideas. But you always have to pay attention to the data, because that's your audience communicating with you. Um, and then that's kind of on you to, you have to figure out what they're telling you, but then also listening. And not enough companies spend that time to listen, and that could be a lot. It could be, yeah, we're going on LinkedIn, maybe it's taking a look at your best customers or clients LinkedIn profiles and seeing what they're saying and who's responding to them. So those all could potentially be clients, and those could all be content topics depending on what it is that they're saying. But then also hashtags and just good Google research and things. But it's kind of like that confluence there between the data and the listening is where you'll get your best content ideas.
Yes, I agree. I think that's critical in the overall process. Data to show historical patterns
Yes.
and listening to evaluate what's actually being said and then marrying those two together to really get a better understanding of what the need is and then developing content to address that. I agree.
Yes.
Awesome. I know that we'd also talked about user generated content. So if you could tell us a little bit about how you go about developing user generated content.
Okay. So, for anybody who doesn't know, user generated content is content that's created by your customers or your clients or even just people in your audience, but usually it's about your company. And that could be text, that could be video, that could be photos, it could be a social media post, it might be a blog post, it could be, a YouTube video review, but it's content that they created, uh, unsolicited, unpaid for, and it works out really well for you, um, positive or negative, right? So obviously the positive stuff, you're like, yay, we're doing the right thing, our customers are happy. But this ties back to listening. If it's negative, then you should take the time to listen. If you found it or if they tagged you, then you should take the time to listen. But all of that is user generated content. People create this stuff all the time, and the reason why it's so valuable to companies is because it's, the measurement was in a Nielsen 2015 report. Nielsen's a data and research firm, and their conclusion was that 66% of consumers trust user generated content more than branded company content. And so that's reviews, that's endorsements, that's testimonials of people saying that you're awesome. So it's the difference between you saying you're awesome and other people saying you're awesome. And we trust it a lot more when other people say that you're awesome. And then that's not to be confused with influencer content, which is paid for, which is typically directed. And so that's like the big difference there between the two. I've seen some people kind of mix those up a little bit. And sometimes influencer content can look like user generated content, but they're definitely not the same. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use user generated content in your marketing strategy. And so some of it is topics. So it could be that somebody is saying something super great about your product or service, but then they add something there that you weren't previously aware of. So maybe a use for your product that you had never thought of before that could inspire a whole series of content depending on how clever that use actually is. That could inspire blog posts or videos, like, just things that people don't think of. And it's silly, but the one thing that's coming to mind right now is that how I now turn my pillowcase inside out to put my pillow in it. Just
What a
something
great
random.
idea.
Yeah, or if somebody came up with a clever way, maybe your product is quote unquote boring, like sheets, and somebody came up with a really cool way to fold it. Well, that's, that would be content, and that would go viral, which is funny because you're like,
Especially
it's
the
sheets.
mattress sheet, right? Because nobody knows how to
Yes.
pull that.
Nobody knows how to fold that. And I know that there are videos out there right now on how to fold it. But if you could make those videos a little more interesting or come up with a reason why I should care about folding those mattress sheets properly, then I'll probably click on them. But that's why, I have 4 kids and I still don't know how to fold them. But so
But
that's one way, like the content ideas,
mhm.
right? That's just there right there. It can inspire all sorts of things depending on what's there. But in terms of using it, there's a series of steps you can kind of take any testimonial or review or endorsement through. So like your reviews are typically, you'll find them on Facebook pages, maybe LinkedIn if you have that sort of business where like you would, kind of cultivate those LinkedIn recommendations, Google reviews, anything like that. And then endorsements, like you might just kind of see them as like random social media posts, like on Twitter, Instagram, a Facebook post where somebody tags a company. But you have to be careful because they won't always tag you, that's the listening part. You kind of have to search on your own name. You can set up Google alerts and things, but you may not see them on social media. But one of the first steps you can take is to take a screenshot of it. If it's just like a social media post that's pretty easily to condensed, you can take a screenshot of it and share it on your channels. And I recommend that that's done like almost as soon as you discover it. You can tag the customer or client, And then you use like your relevant hashtags and stuff. But the screenshots are nice because it kind of carries over some authenticity. Because if you take the screenshot, people can normally tell, oh, that was on Twitter, that was on Instagram, that was on Facebook. We can see what it was. So it's almost like seeing it ourselves, on that person's account because all you did was take the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing I like to do is if you have a website, or maybe your business has a lot of reviews in a lot of different places, it would be great if you could somehow consolidate all of them. And so sometimes a customer success or testimonials page on your website where you kind of copy and paste those testimonials and reviews in can be a great thing to have for your website. And that's content that, you're duplicating the user generated content to show what other people are saying. And it's also a great way to bring your best reviews, your best testimonials all into one place.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily want to do it if you've got like 100, but maybe like your top 10 or something as you kind of cycle those out. You can also
Is there,
create really, yeah,
can I
go
ask
ahead.
a quick question on that? Just for anyone who's listening, that type of content where you're doing a screenshot of someone else's feedback or someone else's comment to use in your own marketing materials, your own content, is that something that you need to get approval on before you use it?
I know that not everyone does, but I actually always recommend that we ask. I feel like it's always super important to get permission. So I guess I probably should have led with that. But
Oh, that's
um,
okay. I just wanted to clarify.
yeah, no, I think we always want to get permission. And then depending on your product or service, it may be even more important. So like if your product or service is somehow related to children, like if I posted on my, I mean, usually if I'm tagging a company, I'm gonna be okay. Like I'll set it public. But like I said, sometimes people find stuff, and if it's got pictures of my kids in it or something, you better ask.
Yeah,
Because
that's huge.
Well, because even if I would have said yes if you asked, does not erase the fact that you didn't ask,
Exactly. And what does that
right?
say
So if
about
you
the company?
exactly, so it's like we the kids have a lot of like Carter's clothes because they're little, right? Like my toddlers, they wear Carter's. So if Carter's messaged me and was like, "Hey, you posted a really cute picture of your daughter in one of our latest dresses. Can we post it?" Then I would say, "Yeah, that'd be so exciting." And she's super cute. I love her so much.
Of course.
Right? But if I came across it and they didn't ask and there's my baby's face on their, Instagram, I'm going to freak out because you're not respecting my content. So yeah, so I would say you always want to ask for permission, and this presents two opportunities, I think. Just from a good customer relationship perspective, you're starting a private conversation now. Like they kind of threw down the gauntlet, if you will, when they posted whatever it was they posted, when they shared it. But now you can send them a private message and say, hey, so we saw your post and we wanted to share it on our social media channels. Are you okay with that? Or we wanted to put it on our website, wanted to feature it. Are you okay with that? And more than likely, they're going to say yes. If they don't, well, then good for you for asking, because now at least they know you respect their content. But they're probably going to say yes. But what this opens the door to is an additional conversation. So this is a great opportunity for market research and, so marketing in general, but also market research. You can ask them more about their experience, what it was they liked about it. If there's anything that, we could improve, we would love to have your feedback. And they'll believe you because you started out with asking for their permission. So when you tell the, that customer, that client that their feedback is valuable, they're going to believe you now. And so you'll be able to dig deep and get some really great information that you can take back. And obviously that's an experience with one person, but it gives you the basis for any additional research. So if you hear a particular point as you're talking to that customer, you can always go and research it. And you're like, oh, this is actually a trend that we weren't seeing, gap analysis. This was a trend that we weren't seeing before. And now we can add that into not just our content marketing, but we can give the tip, to our salespeople, our customer service people, and kind of spread it, as much use as we can get out of it. We'll spread it through the company and get that use. But it opens up a great door for that customer relationship and that customer experience. You're really improving it. So yes, ask for permission. And then as a secondary note, you should look for those marketing research opportunities because they're there. If they're already talking to you, then you might as well ask the questions.
Exactly. You have their attention, so you might as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they're already comfortable now. They're like, "Oh my goodness." I mean, I even today where companies like they're more likely to answer when I send something and somebody responds, I still feel really good about it because I'm like, "Oh, you're paying attention to me." Because when it's that first time, you never know if they're actually going to or not. HubSpot always answers.
Yes, there are some companies that do no matter how big they are, and HubSpot's a big company. So
Yeah.
for them to respond, it also shows how much they value their brand and the experience that their customers have. And they also know the fact that, things aren't going to be perfect, things are going to happen. So when they do, let's address it as quickly as
Mhm.
possible with the most respect that we possibly can. So they are a great example of responding. I completely agree.
I would also say, as long as that permission is gotten, you also may be able to, on certain social media channels, you can actually embed posts. So, like, you could go on LinkedIn and there's an embed code. Instagram has the embed codes. Facebook does. Twitter, all of them have it. I use them on my blog whenever I'm writing content, and maybe I had a LinkedIn post that was related to it. I'll embed my own LinkedIn post right into the content there on the page. And that's a really interesting way to break up content. And it also, again, it kind of has a similar effect as the screenshot where it looks, people understand, oh, this is Facebook, this is LinkedIn, this is real content, I didn't make it up. So
Yeah.
that's another really interesting way to kind of take content from one place and move it somewhere else. You could also create stylized images that you can share on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. And so what I like to do is do the screenshot as soon as you discover the content, and then maybe take a stylized graphic and maybe use it as relevant, months later. So let's say Christmas, maybe someone returned an item right after Christmas and they had a great return experience when, as we all know, right after the holidays, returns can be nightmares.
Yes.
And they post about it, and whatever company they returned it to was like, "Oh, look at that!" And they ask for permission to use it. They share it right then, but they could also share it the following year like, hey, you should buy from us because if you have to return, we're gonna do just fine. It's gonna be smooth. We're gonna be happy. You're gonna be happy. It's gonna be great. And so they'd be recycling that content almost a year later.
Hmm.
But returns management is a really serious pain point, not just for consumers, but also for companies, the companies in that chain of returns.
Is there anything about your business or your ideal customers that they don't know about you that maybe you think they should or you would like them to know about you?
It's something that I do, but I guess I've started formally developing a methodology for service companies and consulting firms in terms of content marketing.
Hmm.
Um, it's mostly content marketing, but it's got some dashes of account based marketing and PR sprinkled in there. Um,
Mixing it up a little bit.
yeah, so I think that, and so that's something I've been working on formally developing now, um, just because there are certain things that I've done for myself and there are certain things I've done for my clients in terms of helping them with that credibility and differentiation. And those two, I think, kind of go hand in hand in any of the service industries or anything where you don't have a tangible product to hand to
Mhm.
somebody. Um, Having that credibility to help you stand head and shoulders above is really important, and that's the other value I think in things like thought leadership. And so content's the driver, but like I said, we've got a couple of other things in there. But yeah, I've been working on a methodology, especially as I put more emphasis on the content marketing strategy side
Mhm.
of my business, just because with a solid strategy, it's a lot harder to go wrong. But even if you have the best designer and you've got the best writer, if your strategy is steering them wrong, then it doesn't matter how good they are. It's
Mhm.
still wrong.
Right.
So I've been putting more emphasis on that strategy piece because, again, even if the talent isn't like the absolute best, if they're at least going in the right direction, you're going to make a lot more progress than the best talent going in the wrong direction. So
Very well said. Okay. Anything else you want us to know about what you've got going on in your business or anything that we haven't covered so far?
I've been working on a freelance content writer's book.
Interesting.
Yes.
When is that going to be
There's
available? Or can you tell us like real high level and then when it's going to be available?
Yeah, so high level, I kind of tell my journey, at least through freelance content writing and getting started, especially from the position of getting started as a writer, making, and finding clients and avoiding mistakes. Um, so in my case, I did things a lot faster than, some of my peers. And it's not to say that speed is necessarily the most important thing. The speed wasn't the value inherently, although some people would like to do it as quickly as I have. But it did mean that I ran into more mistakes in a shorter amount of time versus somebody who took a longer amount of time to run into those same mistakes. And so that is what I'm trying to offer. And so I talk about all sorts of things. I talk about Upwork, I talk about LinkedIn, I talked about networking events, but then also just kind of sharing my insights and my aha moments, um, and through like business development type perspective. Um, in terms of availability, that's a good question. I have people holding me to task over this book, so it's gonna get out there.
It's
Um,
going to be before the end of the year.
I want to say yes.
You
I
want
want to
to?
say yes.
When would be the best time to get it out? Would it be before the holidays? Like, is that realistic to say mid-November, or is it best to say maybe January? Like, do you
I'm
want to
thinking,
over deliver or do you want to over promise?
I know for real. I definitely hate over promising. So
Oh,
I'm
I know.
thinking that it's probably going to be the first quarter of next year. That's where we're at
Okay.
right now. So I'm thinking first quarter next year. I've talked with a couple of publishers. So, once I have a suitable manuscript, I think that, we'll see how that goes. And all else fails, I will self publish it. I will get it out there into the world.
All right. Well, where can people connect with you online?
Okay, so my website is defythestatusquo.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. And you can find all of those down if you scroll down to the bottom of any page on my website in the footer. I've got all the little social media handles linked there. I
Okay.
was going to spell them all out, but that's way easier to do.
Yeah. And I'll also include a link to each one of them in the show notes. So if they want to go there, they can access your website and all of your social profiles from there as well. Well, Ruthie, thank you so much for being here with me today on Connect the Dots. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing so much valuable information with me and everyone else. So thank you very much.
You are definitely welcome.
Okay, was I kidding? She shared so much nuggets of information. In fact, the three things that stood out to me as marketing and sales takeaways are number one, data intelligence is about picking out patterns and seeing the possibilities that no one else can see, then filling in the gaps. Number two, to present the best and most effective content, you need to have your personas established. That should sound familiar. You can, and then number three is you can use user generated content in your marketing strategy by simply doing a screenshot or embedding content in your blog content. That is so important and a great way to reuse testimonials, as she mentioned. So definitely start taking a look at how you can use that as well in your marketing. There were so many other things, right? So share your biggest takeaway by connecting with Ruthie via the link in the show notes. It's a great way to continue the conversation with her as well. All links mentioned are in the show notes, which is essentially a blog post on my website for this particular episode, which is located at vickyoneil.com/40. If you'd like to connect with me and chat about a marketing and or sales project, go to vickyoneil.com/contact. Thank you so much for listening to Connect the Dots. And until next time, I'm Vicki O'Neill. Make today great.